But first we begin here in BC, where police are linking the suicide of a 12-year-old boy last month in Prince George to online sextortion. That's when someone threatens to expose intimate images or information of the victim. CBC's Belle Puri is at our Vancouver newsroom and has details on that. Belle, what more are police saying about this case?
Well, they're telling us that they're releasing this information today because the boy's family wants other families to be warned about what is going on or what could happen. And as you mentioned, this 12-year-old boy killed himself almost 6 weeks ago, and police are trying to identify a suspect. Now, we know, investigations like this are not easy. It's entirely possible that the police are looking for a suspect or multiple suspects who are outside of the country. What police are saying is that we need to talk to children about online predators. They say we are calling for parents and caregivers to be honest with their youth about the dangers of online activity, especially if they are engaging in chats with people they don't know in real life. Now, that's from RCMP spokeswoman Corporal Jennifer Cooper. She goes on to say, while not every case of online sextortion will end in tragedy, the consequences of this kind of activity can follow a youth for their entire life, which needs to be something we talk about openly with our kids. Now, we're told the RCMP is working closely with families of friends of the young boy. They want to make sure that this isn't something that has gone beyond one family. In Prince George alone this year, there have already been 62 reports of online sextortion. That's up from last year's total of 56. And across Canada, numbers are continually on the rise. Experts on the topic call it a health emergency for youth across the country. And they say that the federal government needs to pass an online safety bill.
Well, governments, yes, have to absolutely step in and do something, because we've been working under a self-regulatory model with these entities trying to manage the issue on their own, and we see how well that's gone. So it's been a totally abysmal, failed social experiment that's taken place. So yes, nothing is going to change. It's no different than big tobacco. Did we rely on big tobacco to sort the issues? We didn't. We stepped in and we regulated them. So a very similar thing needs to be happening here, and it's long overdue.
Now, Britain passed an online safety bill a couple of months ago in September. It was a huge step, but of course, just one country alone is not going to be enough to pressure technology companies to put some safeguards in place, particularly with young users.
Belle, parents will be watching this and they'll be concerned, and they'll want to know what kind of resources are there available to help people who are dealing with something like this, particularly with young people.
Well, exactly. Scammers, for the most part, they target youth between 13 and 18 years old. And these days, more and more, it seems to be males, and it seems to be that they are targeting them for financial gain. So places to get help include Talk Suicide Canada. We'll have the numbers up on the screen, where counselors are available to take phone calls and text messages. There's also Kids Help Phone. It offers a 1-800 number. Again, it is on the screen. It offers as well live chat counseling on its website. And there is the Canadian Association for Suicide Prevention. You can find a 24-hour crisis center at needhelpnow.ca, and a lot of people do need that help. The Canadian Centre for Child Protection says it averages 50 calls of sextortion per week, and it's only one organization, one of many that take calls and monitor this type of situation as well. There are the law enforcement officers who are on the front line. So experts say that reported sextortion numbers are just the tip of the iceberg.
Thanks, Belle. Okay, our next guest is Carol Todd. She knows this story all too well. Her daughter, Amanda Todd, died by suicide at the age of 15 back in 2012 after years of cyberbullying. Carol joins us now from Port Coquitlam, BC. Carol, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
I'm sorry that it has to be today. Today is Amanda's birthday, would have been Amanda's birthday. After hearing about another death by suicide linked to online sextortion, I can't imagine how difficult that kind of news is to get on a day like today for you. How are you feeling?
It's heartbreaking when my phone started buzzing with media requests and some. I didn't know what was going on, so I asked them to share a link with me about the story, and it's devastating. It's devastating that we're still chasing sextortion and exploitation, and it needs to be talked about more. We need to educate our children about what the red flags are. We need to make our governments produce the Online Safety Act, just like the UK did, to make tech companies responsible. But we really, really do need to have those trusted conversations with our children and to tell our children that to make them aware of what kind of things are happening online in the digital world. And if someone asks them for private information, for images, our children need to come and talk to a trusted adult to tell them, because these things just can't happen.
Carol, we just heard Bill say that the reason that the RCMP and Prince George are making this known publicly is because the family of the 12-year-old wants that information to get out there. This death is weeks old now, but they feel it's important that the public understand what kind of a problem this is and what warning signs that parents should be looking out for. You've lived through this, and I know you've given this advice out before, but I think it's worth repeating tonight. What should parents be looking for?
Well, you have to talk to your kids about the red flags, right? About if someone's asking you for images, but you also have to look at your child and see if there's any changes in behavior. If you know they're more anxious, they're more stressed, they're eating more, they're eating less, they're sleeping more, they're sleeping less. But basically it's about that trust and that conversation. So having those, it's a really hard conversation to have. It's almost like the sexual education talks that we have with our children, right? Because you're talking about exploitation, we're talking about child sexual abuse, and it's happening more and more because the online world has no boundaries. My advice to parents is to learn as much as you can about exploitation online and offline, and to keep those conversations flowing with your adult friends, right? And maybe, you know, get a group together so that you can come up with a plan on how to talk to your children, because it happens so easily with our kids. As young as 8 years old, devices are getting into the hands of kids more and more now. So, and kids their brain development isn't fully developed, and they don't know how to handle and use some of these devices properly. A game, an app, sometimes it's not just a game or an app. You don't know who's hiding behind the screen. I often say to parents that I speak with, would you leave your front door open to let people just wander through? And they go, oh Lord, no, we wouldn't do that. Well, oftentimes when we have our kids on devices, that screen is an unlocked door, and people come in and talk with our kids. And so we really need to have those conversations with our kids a lot more. And educators, right?
Yeah, that's a really great analogy there. The RCMP and Prince George are talking about not only the rise of this happening, but also that in particular the target, you mentioned as young as 8 years old, but it seems that the particular target is teens between the ages of 13 to 18. And you kind of talked about this, the fact that maybe they're partly naive, they're new to the technology. Is that why they're the target in particular?
Well, they're vulnerable. Their brains aren't fully developed, and kids are social beings. They want to meet people, whether it's online or offline. They want to chat. They want to converse. That's why applications like Instagram and Facebook for older people, right? But you have Discord and you have Snapchat. They all have chat, like a way to communicate with other people, but you don't know who you're communicating with. Like with Amanda's story, her offender had 22 aliases that he switched on and off to talk to her throughout nights and days. And so, I mean, I saw that during the trial, like within seconds, he would turn off one and turn on another. They were female aliases, male aliases, teenage aliases. And so this is how those offenders work these days, and kids are vulnerable. And so with boys, we call it financial sextortion. With girls, it's more traditional sextortion with images and photos. Neither boys nor girls are safe from this. There is a rise in the boys because with the financial sextortion, there's money to be gained at the other end of the offender. That's what they want, right? But we have to say to our children that if you do something, right, and you know that you've made an error in judgment, come talk to us, right? Because that's one of the ways that we can prevent tragic stories from happening. The other thing is just watch the devices that you put into your hands. I know Christmas is coming up. The devices we put into the hands of our kids, do co-viewing and co-sharing, and let's teach our kids how to use our technology wisely, because it's so easy to go off the grid.
I mentioned this right off the top, that today is Amanda's birthday, and in some ways, the Amanda Todd story, for many people in this country, really sparked the conversation about online sextortion. I think we learned so much from that, as did you, about just exactly what the dangers are. Today is in some ways, I feel like talking to you today and you talking to the media about this, it's sort of a very fitting way, a fitting tribute. Is that how are you spending your time remembering her?
Well, today was a day of reflection, of remembering all the good stories, all the things, Amanda, we did together. And then, of course, your mind goes to, if she were alive, what would we be doing to celebrate her birthday? And so one of the family traditions was to have the Christmas lights up on her birthday every year, since she could walk and talk. And so my lights are shining for her today. And I know that with this story today, she would be wanting us to have a voice and to ensure that we continue talking about not only her story, but stories, real life stories that can prevent and that can help others. Real life stories makes kids in a gymnasium, in an assembly, sit up and listen. Yes, we depict these on Netflix and other YouTube videos, right? But a real life story really is the calling for this can really happen. And I don't want parents to ever say, I've talked to my kid once and they'll never do this. They're too smart to do this. I thought my child was too smart to fall into a trap, but it happened. And so many parents whose children have gotten into who have had sextortion, exploitation happen to them, have changed their thoughts in that it can happen to my child, it can happen to my niece, my nephew, my grandchild. So that's why we continue to have to talk about this. And you know what? And Belle commented on all the resources. Those are wonderful resources. There's also American resources and Australian resources. The internet has no boundaries. It's global. Sextortion doesn't just happen in Canada, it happens all over the world. There's 750,000 predators online globally every day. And so that's why we have to talk and have conversations and become more knowledgeable as adults, so that we can have those comfortable conversations, comfortable but hard conversations with our children.
Thank you so much for sharing your real life story with us tonight. Carol Todd, the mother of Amanda Todd, who joined us from Port Coquitlam, BC. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you.